So there's a lot that women are juggling besides a career. So when they're an entrepreneur 24/7, with everything they're trying to do just for their business. And of course, you have to have that family balance too. So it's important that both women and men are taking the time to have that family balance and also to surround themselves as entrepreneurs with people that are really going to help them to grow their business. There's a saying that if you really want something done, you give it to a busy person, because the busy person will figure out how to get it done, and maybe the lazy person wouldn't. So yes, and moms are, especially who are entrepreneurs, are very, very busy. And these are things that everybody, all of us have, some sense of, well, maybe I'm not good enough, or I can't do that well enough. But if we can keep celebrating each other, then I think we will have everyone go a lot farther.
Thanks, Marcia, for joining in with us. Vibe is about, curating interviews that address the unconscious gender bias and also speak about why we have lesser women representation in the world of investing. That being said, the capital allocation even given to women founders is extremely less. And I read it in your LinkedIn profile bio. You've written that, the early stage funding to women was only 3% in 2021, and with the way you wrote it, that we need to change that, with three exclamation marks, that really sent a signal that you're really working towards it, and you're doing that through different angel groups that you're a part of, and you're sharing yourself. So would love to know from you as to how did you start angel investing yourself and then get into these groups to lead them?
Sure. So someone invited me to an angel group meeting back in 2011, and I started going to the meetings and saw the types of innovation that was happening, and I was really fascinated by all the different types of companies and technologies that were being created. And then I joined a group called Golden Seeds. They're based out of New York, but they're a U.S. national group. They have chapters throughout the United States, and they only invest in women-led companies. So I realized very quickly how little funding actually goes to female founders.
Understood. And then when you receive a lot of pitch decks that come your way, how do you observe the difference between, a woman pitching to you versus a man? Because a lot of investors say that women do not like to talk about their achievements as much, and they don't like to self glorify themselves, which sometimes acts in the favor of men who are on the same level trying to pitch. So have you also seen that?
Yes, for sure. In fact, I was just talking to an entrepreneur yesterday, and she was being extremely conservative in her projections and even in all the achievements that she's had already. And I asked her, I said, why are you discounting so much, the things you've already done? She has hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue for her company already. She's very early. And she was like, well, I just want to be straightforward and honest about all of it. I'm like, okay, yes, of course you want to be honest, but you're not celebrating the win. You've done this, you actually have this type of revenue already for your company. You should be, celebrating and letting people know how well your company has done and how well you expect it to do in this year, especially since we're almost at the end of 2022. And she was telling me, well, I think our projections might come in at, and I'm like, you can't, no, you have to have the confidence to, talk about what's really been happening and how great things have been. So we need to get women to have a lot more confidence in the business accomplishments that they have achieved.
That's true. And many people relate this to the cause of imposter syndrome that women sometimes have, where they self-doubt themselves. But why do you think does that even exist? What are the roots of it?
Oh, well, I'm sure we could have a whole podcast or a whole conversation just based on that. I mean, if you think back to just how society has been for, since the beginning of time, I mean, the role of a woman and the role of a man have just been very different. And, it's only been since really the 1950s even, that women started coming into the workforce in the way that they have. And it's really only been in the last 10 to 20 years that we've seen women getting equal types of executive roles even. And, that still needs to progress quite a bit. But, I just think that, women they're smart, but they also have, they're a lot of times the primary caregiver for the children, so there's a lot that women are juggling besides a career. So when they're an entrepreneur, when you're an entrepreneur, no matter who you are, an entrepreneur is 24/7, with everything they're trying to do just for their business. And of course, you have to have that family balance too. So it's important that both women and men are taking the time to have that family balance, and also to surround themselves as entrepreneurs with people that are really going to help them to grow their business.
Yeah, that's so true. And one of the women investors that I was speaking to the other day, she herself said that, working moms are the most efficient workers
That's
because
very
they know
true.
how to balance their time out. They can't really afford missing even a minute, you know.
That's so true. Yes, I've seen, and they always, there's a saying that if you really want something done, you give it to a busy person, because the busy person will figure out how to get it done, and maybe the lazy person wouldn't. So yes, and moms are, especially who are entrepreneurs, are very, very busy.
Right. But taking a step back on what we were discussing about, since you support a lot of women entrepreneurs yourself, how is it that you help them overcome this imposter syndrome? Because, like you said, you hear a lot of entrepreneurs pitch to you, and then you tell them also, okay, this is the right way to do it. So, if somebody really needs to associate with you, what would be your advice to them if they are going wrong in their pitches?
Well, I think we just need to keep talking about it and encouraging people to celebrate themselves and celebrate their wins. And this isn't just in business, this is in everything, in exercise activity. There's a phrase that, you're not practicing for perfection, you're practicing for progress. Like, I'm big into yoga, I love yoga, so it's a yoga practice, but you don't practice to be perfect, you just practice to make progress. And I think if we can keep talking to women and men about that, because men have imposter syndrome sometimes too, and then a lot of times with men, they don't even want to talk about it because it makes them look weak and things like that. So these are things that everybody, all of us have, some sense of, well, maybe I'm not good enough, or I can't do that well enough. But if we can keep celebrating each other, then I think we will have everyone go a lot farther.
Yeah, that's right. And when it comes to celebration, most of the women don't really know the definition of success. And that's why they sometimes don't know what even progress means, or what even perfection means for that matter. And the term is very subjective in that sense, because you said that more than perfection, you need to make progress. But if the idea of progress is only so blurry in the minds, you don't even really know where to go. So, since you support early stage entrepreneurs, what would you, as an investor, tell them that, okay, this is the level of progress for me as an investor in your company?
I think it just totally depends on the company. Every company is going to be a little bit different. Some companies are more focused on consumer products, and in that case, you're looking to see how many customers you have or how much revenue you're generating. In other cases, companies are looking, to build a technology, and that could be consumer based, it could be business based, it could be an enterprise. It just really depends on the company to see what level of progress is. But in a lot of cases, we always tell entrepreneurs, just get something out there, that people can try, and then you will get the feedback from your customers so that you can make your product even better. Because if you just think, well, I'm just going to keep building it and working on it until it's perfect, well, you could totally miss your opportunity to even go out to the market with whatever it is that you have. So you have to let people try it, even if it's messy and even if it's not perfect and it's not like you want. I just talked to an entrepreneur the other day, and they had put out their product with a certain kind of branding, and the branding colors were not getting the right type of feel from their customers. So they went and they completely changed all of their branding. But it would have been much, much harder to do if they had waited and not even gone out to talk to customers until everything was great and the business was built out more. So I think you really have to start those baby steps and show that you're making progress, even though if it doesn't look like it's perfect or you've hit like some massive goal, you still have to celebrate and look at what your customers are saying about what you have right now, because then you can make the tweaks that you need in order to make it better. And then that's going to build to a better goal later.
Yeah, and that's also one of the reasons why it's important to have angels in your early stages. But when I speak of that, some founders are extremely mindful of the fact that how much of equity are they diluting. And although some investors are like opportunists, they would just take away most of the equity from the company, and the founder is left with almost nothing. They don't have any other option also apart from fundraising. So as an angel investor, what is the stake at which you come in, and what stake do you advise founders diluting in early stages?
Well, usually angels will come in after there's some type of a minimum viable product, or at the time that they've started to maybe go to market if it's a consumer product. Sometimes angels don't even come in until, if it's a consumer product, till they have about $1 million in revenue. But it depends on the company and it depends on the situation. Sometimes you'll find that angels are they have a specific expertise, or they're an expert in like one kind of area. And then especially you see this a lot in life sciences and medical devices, where if that person is very experienced, then they may want to go in early and be an advisor, and they could be like an early angel, meaning like part of what we would consider like a friends and family round, where you're raising some money in order to kind of get the company just from the idea stage just off the ground. And then you could go out to, bigger angel groups or try to raise, more money. But in a lot of cases, the very early things that are happening, you probably want to surround yourself with the right advisors who can help you to get to that next level.
Understood. And while I was looking through your profile, I had a very interesting question as to, since you're so interested in investing and you've done so many investments, why not launch a fund of your own, or maybe join a private equity fund as a partner rather than getting into angel investing? How did you choose that decision?
Well, I've helped manage other funds and especially angel funds. But, private equity or venture capital and angel are different, because venture capital, you're just managing other people's money a lot. And not to say that that's bad. That just wasn't something that I really wanted to focus all my time on. And I think that, my goal really is to get more people to know about early stage investing. And ever since in the United States, we've changed some of our regulatory rules back in 2016 to allow people to do what's called equity crowdfunding. So people can pool their money together and get a small piece of ownership into the company. And when you're talking about people who are writing checks out of their own checkbook, whether it's $50 or $50,000, we really need to, care about the company, have a strategy about what we're doing and what types of companies we're investing in. And, those are the times when you're going to help the companies the most, is when they're the smallest. And in a lot of cases, the investments that are made by those venture capital people later on down the road, well, 90% of them they first got investment from angels. So we need more people to get involved at the early stage so that we can help a lot of these companies, especially companies that are founded by women and people of color.
Yeah, but speaking of companies founded by women, how many of angel funds or angel investors do you really see who are females in the ecosystem, especially in the US where you operate?
We see founders, we see a lot of founders. But when we say a woman-led company, we aren't saying that it has to be all women. What we're trying to say is that we want to see that there's a woman in the C-suite or, founding partner, something like that. But diverse teams are really what makes a company do very well. And that could be diversity of gender, it can be race, it can be education, it could be geography, it could be just the types of background that they have. All of the different things that people, all the differences that we all have as people are what makes a diverse team, and a team who's building a company do very well. So, that we're looking for diversity across the board in a lot of different ways. And I think the more that teams have that diversity, the more they're going to really make their product or service or whatever they're building be really great.
Yeah. Yeah. And my question was also slightly towards how many female angel investors do you notice, like yourselves, in the region? Do you think that can also increase in number?
Yes, and we've seen it increase actually quite a bit. We do a lot of data analysis within the Angel Capital Association, which is our professional society here in the US for angel investing. And actually, we just put out a report last week, which it gives some statistics about, a lot of different things related to angel investing here in the US. If you go to the Angel Capital Association's website, you can see the report in full. But we've seen over the years that we have started to have many more angel investors identifying as women, or I should say women who are identifying as angel investors, because in a lot of cases, somebody might make an investment, but women don't tend to put investor on their LinkedIn profile or say I'm an investor. But that's happening more and more now. And I think that it's important that we, even if it's I guess what I would consider a hobby might not be, but you're just doing it a little bit of the time. You're not like doing it all the time. It's not like a full-time job or anything like that. But you would have the ability to just say, hey, I am an angel investor. And we've seen that that's increased quite a bit. I mean, now we're seeing probably 30 to 40% of the angel investors that we see in the US are women. And we also have a group within the Angel Capital Association called Growing Women's Capital, where we meet every month and we highlight different female founders. But that group has, normally at least 30 or 40 different angel groups that are represented that come to those meetings. And those groups are focused on helping female founders.
Yeah, this also reminds me of the fact that here in India, one of the unicorn founders was telling me that she doesn't call herself as an entrepreneur, but she labels herself specifically these days as a women entrepreneur, because she said that, when she was asked that let's curate a list of women entrepreneurs, and somebody said, do you even have so many in India? And she actually proved it by, publishing 100 women entrepreneurs' name in the front page of a leading newspaper in India. So that's how they are trying to change the narrative and change the bias that still exists in the heads of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But having said that, you were working in sales, marketing, and operations earlier after your graduation years. So how did that experience help you transition into investing? How did you take this decision that, okay, I've done enough of marketing, I've grown a company from X value to Y. Now it's time for me to maybe give that value to others and help them grow?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to put it. I decided that I wanted to help other people to grow their business, and I wanted to start to help spread the word of, what people are doing in this early stage. I had no idea. I worked in corporate America for a long time. I didn't know what was happening even in my own backyard. And so I found it really fascinating to see all the different technologies and the different types of life science companies that were being built and consumer products that were being developed. So I just really wanted to get in and, try to help people learn about it and try to help connect the entrepreneurs to the right places, because it is really hard to raise money as an entrepreneur. And I feel like if we can't make it a little bit easier for them, then how are they going to have the time to grow their business? So we need to really help the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem, because at the end of the day, we want to have really strong companies that are creating a lot of jobs and adding to the overall economic output for their communities. And the only way that we can do that is to try to get them the funding that they need at the beginning so that they can help to grow the business.
Right. But you also mentioned in the first part of the interview that an angel really comes when you have established a minimum viable product at least. What if a company needs funding to do that itself? How do you really get funds for that kind of a company then?
Well, that's kind of what I was talking about before with finding like an expert in whatever it is that you're doing and having an advisory board that will help you to get that initial funding. In some cases, at least here in the US, with not just equity crowdfunding, but there's other things. We have something called Kickstarter, which allows people to if let's say you had a product and you had an idea for it, but it wasn't manufactured yet, you could go onto this platform and you could get people to buy it ahead of time. They might have to wait like 6 months or a year to get the product, but it would give you the money in order to manufacture the product so that then you could see, and then you could get feedback from the customers who bought the product once you gave it to them. So it's a good way for somebody to get started, especially if you have something that is more consumer focused.
Understood. And I also read about your story where you were a part of the deal where the group was acquiring the franchise rights of a new sports team, and this was also one of your experiences of starting a business, growing it, and exiting through it. So if you could just elaborate on that and give a glimpse of how it happened to our viewers.
Yeah, so we ended up doing this through our grad school class, and I think that that's really something that's important, that you end up surrounding yourself with different people. And I think in any type of a startup company, you're really looking at the team and how that can help to build the company. And along the way, you need to find those people that you need, and maybe you don't need them full time, maybe you only need them part time, but surrounding yourself with all of that and making sure that your company is growing and helping to make sure that the funding that you need and that you're getting is just in incremental amounts. You aren't taking too much funding too early, and you're not trying to bootstrap for too long, but then you can get to a point where the company really starts to grow, and that helps you toward the exit.
Understood. But how do you really decide that, okay, this is the time that I need to take an exit as a founder? Because the only way you can, exit through a business is either through a public offer or through a strategic acquisition. So, investors also do play a key role in deciding which one of the two. But what's the triggering event usually in startups that leads to the acquisition or the public offer?
So in the US anyway, public offerings don't happen very often. That's not usually how a startup does exit. It's usually from some type of an acquisition. And in a lot of cases, it can be what we call an acqui-hire, meaning that they've acquired the company, but they've also hired the entire team. So we see it pretty often where if there is such an acquisition, that the company is acquired, and then the investors, we may get back, a certain amount of money during the acquisition process, but we might get back more money in 2 or 3 years once the team has hit some milestones after the acquisition. So we see that, pretty often when that happens. Now, I will say that there are times that companies probably need to exit earlier than what happens. Sometimes they think, well, I'm just going to keep growing the business. I've seen companies that have done well, have gotten an offer, and they've refused the offer because they thought they could grow the company bigger to a higher multiple and make more money. That isn't always the best strategy. It just depends on the company, but that can be hard.
Yeah, and when it even comes to the acquisition, some investors have this demand that you can only get acquired by someone who has a common investor, so that it becomes easier for them to deal on the table. So what are some of those terms that you generally come up with in the acquisitions, that okay, these are the prerequisites? Even if you, I mean, get offers from companies like McDonald's or Subway, you can't really sell it to them if you don't have a common investor, because that's what happened in India in one of the cases. So in your experience, if you've encountered any such.
No, tell me about the one that you're talking about?
So the company name is Raw Pressery, and they were sold for one fifth of their valuation to another giant, which was into juices making and maybe the creams that we eat with our chips. It was into that, and they had acquisition offers from McDonald's, but they didn't have a common investor. And this other Win Greens Farms, which acquired Raw Pressery, they had Sequoia as their common investor. So they waited for a Wingreen farm to come such that they could sell it, but then it resulted in a very bad down round. So
Mm.
that just happens when investors put demands like this on you, that okay, you can't really sell until you get someone who has a common investor.
Yeah, it can be very challenging when you're getting to those bigger fundraisers and the more amounts of money that you need even before you would go toward trying to be acquired. But because there can be down rounds, and especially right now. I mean, 2021 was a very good year to raise money, and there were a lot of exits that happened in 2021, and then in 2022 things went very south.
Yeah.
And companies are really struggling right now to raise money. Only the strongest of the strong will survive. And I have not seen nearly the number of acquisitions in 2022 that we saw prior.
When we say strongest of the, I mean, strongest of the strongest,
Mhm.
what really makes a company strong? What are those key fundamentals that if the company has it, they really don't need to worry as much of just shutting down?
Well, I think it has to do with the team and how the company's growing. Do you have the right team members? And it doesn't necessarily mean do you have all the right people that can do the job, but do you have all the right people that can not only do the job but can get along? Can they have the same vision? When things happen, when things do go wrong, can they handle what goes wrong? I mean, all of those types of things are what makes for a strong team. So saying that only the strongest of the strong will survive, I also think that means that you have to be super strategic in how you have raised money in the past and then how you're utilizing that money. So people who were able to fundraise in 2022 and get themselves into a position where they can now keep going for another 18 to 24 months, that's going to be a pretty strong position to be in so that you can hit some milestones so that you can grow your company and raise more money if needed even before you'd exit. But it's going to be really hard if you're bootstrapping, you really don't have the money, and then you're going out and looking for funding and you come across very desperate. That's when I think we're going to see a lot of companies that won't make it.
Yeah. With this, I get reminded of one of the interviews where I was hearing that, when your company is in a good shape, please raise money because investors will also have faith in you. Don't really wait for the edge to come to you and then look for investors, because nobody is really going to give you money at that point in time.
And that's exactly right. It's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But I'm sure that you might be receiving a lot of applications since you come at the angel investing stage. How is it that one application gets differentiated to you from the other? How do you pick and choose?
Well, in a lot of cases, I'm a venture partner for Mindshift Capital. That's really the only place that we're taking applications right now. And I guess it really has to do with our thesis. We only invest in women-led companies, so there has to be a woman on the C-suite. And then we also invest in tech, food tech, ed tech, fintech, and health tech. So if it doesn't fit into any of those categories, then it isn't part of our thesis. So it's not like it's a bad company. It's just not something we would invest in. So there's a screening process, and then, we would look that way. But I would have to say in most cases, angels tend to invest with each other. Somebody coming to LinkedIn and asking me for money who I don't know and they haven't really told me much about themselves other than that they want money, that's probably not a really good way to get people's attention. So
Yeah, that's true. And here's where relationship building comes into picture. You really need to establish trust because you're taking money from one pocket to the other. So you can't just ask for it upfront. I mean, nobody gives it.
that's right. Yes.
Yeah, true. But you mentioned about investing in tech-led businesses as well. But if we see the proportion of women in invest in entrepreneurship, more of them will be in the impact side of things rather than the tech side of things. And that's why most of the people also say that more women need to be educated in STEM so that we have more tech entrepreneurs who are women. But why do you think is there a gap in this sector when it comes to entrepreneurship?
Well, probably just from the, everything you just said, we do need more girls educated in STEM. And I think we're seeing more of that. But I see plenty of women who are working in tech companies. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be the chief technologist. They could be the CEO running the company and they're hiring a tech team. I just talked to an entrepreneur. She's a doctor and she created an app. It was complete. Her company is all technology driven through this app, but she didn't build the app and it's not, something that she would work on herself, but she runs the company and she's behind all the content and the viability of the product. So, I think there's places where women can pick up and use their skill sets, whether it is directly in tech or whether or not they, maybe it's just them running a business, but there's a lot I think that women can do.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared this example because just one example also heard by another woman who might think in her head that I just can't do it. If she hears a story like this, she'll be like, okay, if she did it, I can also do it. And I
That's
think that's why it's
exactly
so
right.
important that founders come up and share more and more of the stories.
That's exactly right. You don't have to be an expert in everything to be able to grow your company. You just find and surround yourself with the people that you need at the times that you need them. Like, for example, this particular entrepreneur, she needed a tech team for a specific period of time while the app was being built. Once it was built, then she just needed a couple people who might be able to help with the maintenance. But that time during the build out was important and she needed a lot more people, but then you don't need that all the time. So there's that fractional, or contract work that you can get for a short period of time. And those are the things that women are very good at. They're good at managing, all the pieces, so I think that, women should really take a look at, of course you can do something in the tech field. You just surround yourself with the people you need when you need them, and you don't always need them all the time.
Yeah, I mean, mentorship guidance like this can really pave the path for women who are especially wanting to become an entrepreneur because it requires a lot of mental resilience. And if
That's
you don't have the right advice, you'll just land up in a lot of trouble.
that's true. Yes.
Yeah, but speaking on that front, what's your leadership style like? How do you build teams, lead people, get them together?
I think a lot of it has to do with just listening to what people are asking for, having a common goal and being able to drive toward that goal together, making sure that people feel heard and, backing them up with the things that they care about and that they want to do.
Understood. And any recent innovative led investments that you have done, which you thought never would exist, but you heard this entrepreneur and you're like, okay, wow, this can also be created in the world.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to an entrepreneur yesterday, and she has a beauty box that is similar to, we have a company here in the US called Stitch Fix, and you can it's like a subscription, and every month you get a different box in the mail with clothes in it. Well, this particular entrepreneur put together a box that has different types of beauty products in it, and trying to make sure that people really understand how to use the products. There's lots of tutorials. So I think in a lot of cases, whatever your product is, sometimes you're going to have to educate your customer on how to use it or how to, make it better for how you're using it. So I think this is really a great way that entrepreneurs can take advantage of building that relationship with our customer too, especially in a lot of cases, you want the customers to keep coming back. You want to have a subscription model or reoccurring revenue. And that's really the best way to do that.
Got it. And in most of the founder pitches, be it a male or a female, people sometimes lose out on the purpose of why they're doing what they're doing. And when you just get on a call with them, they'll just pitch to you as if they're reading a script rather than asking you, okay, what is it that you want to hear or you want me to talk about? And that is the differentiating factor that I've seen, at least in successful founders and those who couldn't make it, because they really take the other person into consideration, get into their shoes, and then try to listen from their ear as to what they would want. So, have you also observed such differences in pitching? And how is it that you then tell them to change their style?
Well, in a lot of cases, I tell entrepreneurs that they should put a little video together when they're asking people to let them pitch. Put a 2 or 3 minute video together with some highlights about why it's important that we as investors should hear their pitch. And because in a lot of cases, we might look at a pitch deck as an investor. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to let somebody come to our meeting or our group or whatever the story is and give a 20, 30-minute pitch. So if you really want to get seen and get more people to possibly let you do that, I would say put a little video together. Nowadays, 2 to 3 minute videos can work really well.
Yeah, I'm sure that whosoever will be listening to this will take this into notice, because a lot of people sometimes miss out on showcasing their personality, which is a big attractor for any investor. Most of the people at the early stage just bet on the founder and their personal brand. And the idea, they just believe it can take off because the founder is having so much of conviction.
Right. Yep. Very
Yeah.
true.
And what are some of those red flags that you observe in startups that makes them fail? Because they might be having the right team, the right capital, everything would be going right. Customers would be loving their product. But what are some of the things that they miss out on, which leads them to ultimately shut their shop?
Well, probably the number one reason that people or that startup companies go out of business is they run out of money. They don't have a good strategy for how they're raising money or using the money. In some cases, people raise money and then they think, oh, we have all this money now, so we can do all these things. And they aren't very scrappy with how they're using the money, and they need to be much, much more strategic about it, because it is the number one reason why companies fail.
Yeah. And what's the timeline by which you expect returns to come your way? Because as an investor, you would always be anticipating growth and updates from the founder as to how the company is performing. So, as an investor, what are your expectations after you put money in?
Okay, so a couple things. Definitely the updates. So information rights are very, very important to angel investors. And in many cases, especially with all the groups that I work with anyway, we look to make sure that we have that in writing, that we're going to get quarterly financial updates from the company. If it's not in their documents already, we'll ask for a side letter to make sure that we have that. So we want to hear from the company every quarter. We have KPIs that we look for, and we want to see that they're tracking to those KPIs. So I think that is very important. All that being said, this is a very risky asset class, and investing in early stage companies, you need to be very patient, and it doesn't take just a year or two. I mean, sometimes it can, but for the most part, it takes years and many years. So if people are putting money in and then making plans with the thinking that there's going to be an exit in a certain amount of time and for a certain amount of money, that isn't a very good strategy, and that's just going to cause the investor a lot of heartache, as I've seen sometimes happen in the past. So really, we just need to make sure that we're communicating with the companies on a regular basis and surrounding them with the things that they need. That could be, help with getting into certain places, as far as maybe they're looking to sell their product into a big box store or something, or they're looking for a connection so that they could help get some information from a hospital system. It all depends, but we need to make sure that we as investors are being good investors, meaning that we don't just write a check and walk away. We're there helping them and giving them some of the support that they need that's more than just money.
Yeah, speaking of support, I'm sure that and a founder is also under a lot of pressure to perform after having taken the money. And like you said, that they have to inform you of quarterly performance. What if the performance doesn't go as planned? And it happens consistently. It's not just one quarter,
Mhm.
but many quarters across the years. It just in the red line. How do you, as an investor, really motivate the founder to get going? And till when do you do that? Till what stage? And when is it that you say to yourself, okay, it's time to give up? Maybe what is lost is lost.
Well, you don't really give up until they shut the doors completely. I think it's important that we keep, being an entrepreneur is really hard. So they need motivation and they need to have a place that they can go to talk to, hopefully every entrepreneur has at least one or two advisors. Maybe they're investors, maybe they're not, but somebody that they can talk to who will help them when things get a little rough. So yes, you definitely need to have those types of that type of support, surrounding the company. And also just being able to if there is a bad quarter or year, you want the founder to feel comfortable telling you the truth. I don't want somebody to send me an update that's sugar coated to just to try to make it sound good. If something's going wrong, tell us early so that we can help you, kind of put you back on the right track. If you wait too long, in a lot of cases, there's nothing that we can do to help you. And that's when I see companies fail the most.
And what are those cases where you see yourself that, okay, I can't really help anymore? What's that really tilting point?
Um, I guess it just comes down to if you've waited too long to tell your investors or your advisors or your board what's really going on, then, then you try to go out. In a lot of cases, it's because they're running out of money. And if they try to go out then and raise money and they are in a desperate situation, investors aren't going to want to put more money into that. So that's when I start to see the downward spiral of things really going wrong.
Yeah, and sometimes people don't put money in because they see that the valuation is blown up massively. So, how do you tell founders to value their company correctly? How can founders actually come to a right valuation so that everything remains transparent and clear, both from the investor side plus the team members who are working for them? Because nobody should have a picture which is very different from the reality.
Yeah, I mean, that's all a negotiation between the investors and the entrepreneurs. But it needs to be fair. It needs to be fair on both sides. It needs to be fair to the investors, but it also really needs to be fair to the entrepreneurs too. And if you find that balance, then I think that's where everybody feels good and you can move the company forward. But if the entrepreneur feels like they're getting, the short end of the stick, or the investors feel like the entrepreneur is trying to keep their valuation too high and it's not really justified, then I think it's a lot more challenging, and future fundraisers will be harder because of it.
Yeah, but do you insist companies having the 409A valuation, the internal valuation in the companies?
It depends. In a lot of cases, the priced round will be the valuation marker. We don't, and it sometimes you'll need a 409A, but not always.
Got it. And we just spoke a lot on finding the right advisors, the team. It's easier said than done. So, how is it really that you find such people? There might be channels through which we can find, LinkedIn being one of the biggest. But how do you know, okay, this can be my right person? How do you really scan the market in that sense?
I think you just have to start looking for the people that you want to surround your company with early. before you really, really need them. The more entrepreneurs are desperate, the more they're not going to find any of the support they need, whether it's financial or not. So
Yeah. Got it. And while the path is clear after you get an idea and working on it, but what about people who are extremely ambitious to start something of their own, but do not have an idea, nothing is there in their head, but they have a 10-year goal that, okay, whatever I build, I want to become successful in it. So what is the pre-ideation strategy that you would suggest to someone who comes as a mentor to you that, okay, I want to get into this sector, now how do I begin?
well, I think they just have to do their research and find, what they like, what they're good at, and then, start surrounding yourself with those types of people. And, the more that you talk to people and ask people to introduce you to other people that they know in that same industry, I think that's really how people can break in to really any area they want to.
Understood. And lastly, since you are a part of so many associations, the networks, how do you empower women entrepreneurs? What kind of events do you hold? I heard you saying monthly meetings is something that you do. Apart from that, are there any pitching sessions that you host for them, or any meetups where they can meet their co-founder, maybe if they are looking for one?
I don't personally do that, but I know that in many cities they have that type of thing. I'm currently living right now in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we have a group here in North Carolina that does that. It's a way that you can join this group and you can be able to find maybe a co-founder, maybe you'll find an advisor. Eventually, I'm sure there'll be some type of investing that might happen. So, but I would just look in your local area and try to see, kind of who you can connect with and the types of groups and organizations that are happening really right in your own backyard.
Got it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thanks. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.